Hello, everybody. Greetings to all. Welcome to the Snooker Hall podcast. I'm Dan Murren, and I'm very happy, Dan Murren, because Shaun Murphy has won the 2025 British Open. A fantastic victory for the magician. Let's talk about it. As regular listeners will know, on this show, we focus less on scores, stats, but more on what those stats mean, what we can take from this information, how we can analyse it, and how we can learn to understand this sport a little bit better. With that in mind, I thought it would be helpful to hear the opinions of a snooker fan who saw a lot of the play live in Cheltenham over the past week. I am delighted to welcome snooker nerd and Neil Robertson's arch nemesis, Rob Francis, back to the Snooker Hall podcast.
Well, thanks for that, Dan. When you said you were very happy at the start, I thought you were going to say, I'm very happy to have and welcome the great Rob Francis back on the show. And then it turned out to be Shaun Murphy was getting those plaudits, and I'm just getting it from all angles that I am a massive nerd again. So, thank you very much for that. I mean, you're not wrong, so no arguments from me. But yeah, thanks for having me back on here. I appreciate it.
Oh, no, it's always nice to talk to you, Rob. And I'm a fan of Neil Robertson, but now that you and him are involved in a public beef, then I don't know if maybe it'll ruin the chances of getting him on the podcast in the future.
I suppose. I mean, public beef is. I mean, are you striving for headlines here, Dan, by any chance, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Neil Robertson attacks fan.
You're stirring the pots, making mountains out of molehills. I mean, I thought you were better than that, but maybe I was wrong. I don't know.
No.
But yeah, that was something very unexpected that blew up essentially. But it was very cool, very special for me as a huge Neil Robertson fan. So all good, yes. And I'm sure, Neil enjoyed it a lot as well.
No, Neil Robertson, he's one of my favourite players. I know I just want to see him win a little bit more, if I'm honest. It's he wins a lot though, doesn't he? So
I mean, it's one of those things. Like when he had that spell, sort of how long was it? Sort of 18 months or something like that without winning a title after his sort of consistent record where he'd won one every year or season or whatever it was for such a long period of time. After that had gone, it was so noticeable because of just how prolific he had been, and it's it's an absence that was you absolutely greatly missed from the fans. I felt not even just the sort of the die-hard Neil Robertson things. I think people, even as neutrals, just enjoy having a Neil Robertson in great form on the tour, and thankfully that's back where he is now. So happy days for snooker fans far and wide, I would say.
Yeah, well, I mentioned it in a recent episode. He won, was it 2 ranking titles last season? So he won the English and the Grand Prix, and he won in the biggest one so far of the season.
Yeah. So, like that recent win, I feel like he's on basically a massive free roll now, just because of like the gigantic prize money and thus ranking points on offer in that tournament. He can basically do whatever he likes now. His ranking is secure. He's in the big tournaments towards the season end. So yeah, anything more is essentially a bonus for him, and it's just amazing considering where he was, sort of not really that long ago. So things can change very quickly in snooker, and that's just another example.
I suppose it shows the standards to which we hold him. He went 18 months without winning a trophy. A lot of players would be happy just to win one trophy, but he goes less than 2 years without winning one. We think, oh, he's finished. But
exactly.
Not.
I mean, in terms of the number of ranking titles won, I can't remember exactly what the number is now. It's like high 20s, isn't it, somewhere?
I think it's 26 now, I believe.
Yeah, he's very comfortably in sort of the upper echelons of that list. And so I think that's perhaps why sort of we hold him, despite just the one world title. That's it's his sheer sort of consistency in regard to everything else, where that comes into play with regards to why we hold him in, partly why we hold him in as high regard as we do. Um, and that it's always something that is brought up, that the one world title, whenever he wins any title, it's like, well, this is a good victory and stuff, but he only has one world. It's something that sort of, people will keep repeating, and it's something that Neil will be conscientious of, and very much aware of, because it will ultimately have an impact on his entire legacy at the end of the day. But at the same time, it's similar to sort of Jimmy White in that way. Not quite as severe, obviously, because Jimmy obviously never won it. Neil has won it, so that there's that. It's sort of like every time you win, sort of the Worlds or any tournament for that matter, any extra time you win it after that is kind of not quite on the same level, perhaps, as the sort of the first time. It's sort of Mark Selby's first victory would be his best. His second, it's still an amazing achievement to become a multiple world champion, but perhaps not on the same level as becoming a first time world champion. Third time isn't that. If you catch my drift, it goes. It's kind of not to diminish each individual tournament, but it's not necessarily in the same bracket of as great an achievement. Generally, there are probably exceptions to that, but that's speaking in a sort of broad sense. So I've waffled on there and probably just sort of gone on quite a lot about not very much at all, but there we are.
Well, that's why you're welcome in the podcast, Rob. Waffling is not a problem.
Indeed.
Yeah. But Neil did not win this tournament.
No, indeed. Well, he won our hearts though, and especially my heart. So there's that.
Okay, so it's just as important, And actually, speaking of that, people like Neil because I don't know, he seems like a nice bloke.
A very, very nice man. Like, I've really, really positive, good interactions with Neil. I see him making time for sort of lots of fans. I think it was in Brentwood. It was after I can't remember who he was playing now, but after his match, quite a few people went to approach him at the table and stuff like that to get signatures or selfies or whatever. And there were other matches in play, and he was very conscious about letting them know, like, I'd love to do all this with you, but there's there are matches still going on and stuff. It wasn't like he just walked out and left them. He was, even though he couldn't sort of stick around for very long, he made them aware, like, of the reasons why he couldn't, and such. It's just little things like that sort of shows the appreciation that he has for sort of the fans and what they mean for the sport, essentially, and for him. So that's great to see.
And Ryan Thomason was on this podcast late last year, and he could not have been more praising of Neil's contribution to his career and to others, and just how generous he is in terms of.
It's interesting you should say that. Like, I think it's today, actually. I saw something earlier. I think it's a year to the day since Neil made his 900th century, and I believe that was against Ryan Thomason. So that's quite fitting how that has worked out, I would say. A bit nerdy, but there we are. So,
a nerd.
Living up to type, perhaps.
But the glory this week goes to Shaun Murphy.
Yes.
I've got to say, I'm delighted about this.
As am I.
I thought there was Mark Allen recently drew level on 12 ranking titles, and Shaun has immediately pulled ahead again, which I think I don't know if there's. I think their beef has been slightly overblown.
It's an interesting tussle, isn't it? Because those two have a quite an interesting, fluctuating sort of dynamic, I would say. There's something between them. It's sort of like friendly animosity, I suppose, is a way of sort of describing it. But it's always fascinating to see their little the little conversations they have with each other and stuff. So that's just adds another little edge to that going forward. So fun times.
No, I think there is a friendly rivalry there, healthy competition.
There was a time it got quite intense, though, didn't it? I think people were like, "Oh, this is just friendly banter. It's just playing up to it a bit." But it got. I can't remember exactly the specifics, but it did seem to get quite it sort of crossed the line almost in some ways, but that was a while ago now, so maybe things have
Yeah.
sort of calmed down a bit. As I would, they're both great players and great chaps, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm sure they can see the lighter side of everything.
I'm also happy about yesterday, not only because Shaun Murphy won, but because one of the players who I'm not as fond of, I think we'll say, on the tour, lost in the final. I did make a little comment on X, Twitter, about why I'm not really a fan of Anthony McGill. I think it could have, the backlash on that comment could have been a bit more severe. I think we spoke about this before we started recording.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it could have been a bit more severe. People calling me an idiot, people saying I'm overthinking it, whatever. But yeah. I mean, if I'm looking at Shaun Murphy versus Anthony McGill, there's no contest who I want to win that. It's Shaun Murphy every single day of the year.
Yeah, it's like I do find that quite interesting because I don't see a lot of negativity in any sense towards Anthony McGill really. That I mean, I did at the time of that incident, but that was 5 years ago now, essentially, wasn't it? Pretty much just over 5 years ago because it was the summer, the COVID World Championship, where he had the incident with Jamie Clark in the quarterfinals. I
It was
believe, or
the
was it?
second
Oh,
round,
16 was it? Right.
round of 16.
Um, Obviously that was a sort of a pretty major thing at the time. I can't really speak about that the specifics of that incident because I would say I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what went on, which I think is perhaps quite a prudent uh, approach to take. I mean, everyone has sort of like had an opinion with regards to like which player they backed. Then I mean, you had I can't even remember like exactly what went down in the arena. I know McGill was talking to the ref like after the session, and then Jamie was giving it large on Twitter with the whole "if you want to dance, let's dance" or whatever it was. But I think that was during the pandemic, and it would have been a very high pressure situation. I think I mean I would personally think it's uh, regardless of what went down, I wouldn't hold a big grudge against sort of either player under those circumstances because as far as I know, there hasn't been uh, a lot since. I would say, especially well, I mean, Jamie Clark isn't on the tour anymore, is he? Has he dropped off now?
No, I think he's still on.
Is he still on? I mean, he might have dropped
I
off
don't
and then
know.
got back on.
I'm
I
sure
think.
actually.
I
I should know that. I
Yeah,
don't know, to be honest.
this is bad, isn't it, for snooker nerds and podcast hosts?
We don't even know
Uh,
who's on the tour.
but obviously McGill has been pretty quiet just in recent sort of months and years, just with a general lack of form more than anything else. Um, Although I would be curious to get your thoughts on his post-match interview with Rob Walker, the brief one last night, because there's
Well,
been a bit of a discussion about that I've seen, which is quite interesting, and I wonder if we hold similar views.
well, before I get to that, I will say, just for those who are not aware, why I'm not a fan of Anthony McGill.
Sure.
It was during that match against Jamie Clark. Anthony had beaten Jack Lazowski in the first round, 10-9. Got through to face Jamie Clark in the round of 16. I think he was 8-2 down to Jamie Clark. Okay, Jamie Clark's in his eye line, whatever. You know, we saw Michael Holt recently, as a gentleman, a young rookie in the corner, kind of, shifting, and Michael Holt just calmly said, "Sorry, could you just stop, like, moving, please, when you're in my eye line?" And that's all it took, and the player stopped doing it. But to see Anthony McGill literally running, not jogging, running out of the arena, chasing Jamie Clark into the back and confronting him, and then continuing to make a scene of it when they return to the auditorium. And Jan Verhaas is there saying, "Okay, I'll deal with it." And Anthony McGill still keeps going. And I just could not get my head around why he's not just letting the referee handle this. And for him to be approaching his opponent in such a hostile way, I thought was completely unprofessional. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew he was getting outplayed on the bays, so the only way he could win was to try and unsettle a more inexperienced opponent. Imagine him trying to do that against Ryan Day or Stuart Bingham or Mark Williams. It just would not happen. He wouldn't do it. So I think he tried to bully his opponent because he was being outplayed, and I can't stand for that. He then had Kurt Mafflin in the quarterfinals, got through there. Kurt Mafflin hasn't been seen in years. So
Was that the match with the middle finger? Or did he? Well, the tournament where Kurt made the middle finger at the ball.
I don't know.
Was that one, or was that a later one? I'm just that's just spitballing
Don't know.
Kurt Mafflin facts.
Don't know. But but this idea that Anthony McGill was a crucible specialist, he had a pretty easy run to the semi-finals, and as soon as he came up against, let's be honest, a higher echelon of player, Kyron Wilson, he took it to a decider. But I'm such a cynic, and I was so appalled at his behaviour in the second round that when during the decider, after Kyron had fluked that green to go beyond the snooker's, well, into the snooker's required stage, the commentator said that Anthony McGill, maybe it was Alan McManus, possibly. I don't know if I can't remember who the commentator was, but I know they said he had a sick smile on his face, as if fate had dealt him a cruel blow. And I was there watching, praying for a Kyron win, doing my best Nelson Muntz. I thought he got what he deserved. I thought karma had come back to bite him on the bum. And I think he deserved it. I don't think he deserved to get to that semi-final. And I'm happy he lost that match. I think it would have been a tragedy if he got through to face Ronnie in that final.
Strong. That's such strong words. Wow. Like, yeah, that's a lot of that is. I mean, I haven't heard people get this sort of this built up about that in years. I feel like I've been teleported back to 2020 here.
I just thought it was so unsportsmanlike.
You must. I mean, those semi-finals were sort of huge in terms of the narrative and the story about our sport. For a multitude of reasons, and it feels like there was an extra edge when you were watching there, because I mean like with the whole McGill Jamie Clark thing, I didn't hold like bear any grudges against sort of either of them really. I do know like Anthony McGill is very well regarded, I believe, from sort of fans and players both, in terms of just generally how he conducts himself. So I'm not sure how much how much that holds weight, like in the long term. You know, I suppose you can look at certain aspects of what happened and think, okay, that wasn't right necessarily. But I mean, I personally wouldn't hold any ill will against that. Though obviously, you are well within your rights to. I mean, that's what sport's all about, isn't it? We all have our favourites and those we favour less, if you like.
But to answer your question about his post-match interview, I think there's an interesting comparison to be made with the last big final that Shaun was in.
Absolutely, yes.
The Masters. Kyron Wilson made a speech. He said, well, I'm just going to have to go and smash it in Berlin. And he did just that. But Kyron was referred to as arrogant. Oh, he's disrespectful. So I don't think so at all. I think there were a lot of positives that Kyron could take. Okay, he lost the final. He's not going to be happy about that, of course, and nor should he be. But Kyron's response got a bit of stick, and I don't really agree with those who criticised him for it. When we compare it to Anthony on Sunday, okay, he's just lost a final, which he says was there for the taking. I don't think I agree with that personally. I think Shaun was the better player throughout the day. But I don't blame him for being upset. I think he was very abrupt with his... Was he intending to be disrespectful? I don't think so. I think he was just annoyed at himself. I think he was gutted that he'd lost. I don't blame him for that. But when he's receiving a cheque for £45,000 and he has a face like a slapped ass, I think it's more than most people in that audience will earn in a year. And to be dismissive of it, I think that could sit badly with people.
Mm.
But that's the only slight criticism I would have from it. I get why he's gutted. No
Yeah,
player wants to lose, and I hate speeches. Oh, I'm just happy to be here, even if I
yeah,
lost. No, 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 that's not sport. Then you're not. That's why you lost, probably, if you're just happy to be there. So I get why he's
yeah.
gutted, and
I,
I sympathise with
I
him for
think,
that, of course. But
yeah, I think you put that very well, actually. It definitely won't sit well with everyone. But I think I was making this point to Nick Metcalf in I think it was yeah I think it was Nick in Brentwood. Like post match interviews are like 90% of the time I would say generally they're quite dull, or at least well, dull may be the wrong word, but just generally uninteresting tends to be the same sort of stuff. People say the right things, and you kind of know what's going to be said before it's said a lot of the time. I don't think post trophy wins or runner up speeches. They're not really an exception either. Like sort of much of the time, and that's why when people say stuff a bit out of the norm, a bit more outside the box, or in this case, they say very little at all. It sort of it becomes a talking point because it's quite rare essentially. So yeah, I have no problem at all with the way Anthony uh, reacted. Ultimately, um, I love seeing raw emotion, and that was so. I mean, it was more subtle in sort of Kyron's speech after losing to Shaun at the Masters, but it was still there, and there was sort of an edge to certain things he he was saying. Although obviously it depends on you interpret how you interpret that. Um, where with Anthony, it was I suppose dismissive is a word for it, but then um, this is exactly why we this is why we have interviews sort of there and then. We don't wait half an hour for the dust to settle a bit. We like to get that raw emotion. Well, I mean, I do personally. I can't speak for everyone else, but I imagine people do. People generally don't want to just. People want a bit of excitement. They want to see that it meant something. And I think Anthony's reaction sort of encompassed that for sure, because we did see just how completely and utterly gutted he was.
yeah. And if he were not gutted, I think there would be a problem.
Hmm.
That would be a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Okay, was he dismissive? I think I think it's the fact that he was so dismissive of such a huge amount of money.
Mm.
And it's just, oh, okay, well, it's not all bad. I might have lost, but I've still got 45 grand in the bank now.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people watching at home and in that arena who go like, I wouldn't mind 45 grand. And
Mm.
I think that's the only factor that I think he could be criticised for, really. But I think Rob handled the Rob Walker, that is not you, handled the
I thought
situation quite well.
it's not really the time. I mean, you get sort of mid podcast congratulations for how well your guests are doing.
Well done for that. Yeah. I thought Rob handled the situation really well. He could see, I'm not getting much out of this guy. He's clearly gutted.
Yeah,
Let's go to Shaun. Shaun's one happy toot. Shaun is never
yeah.
shy of a few
That was
words.
pretty. That was
Shaun
pretty.
loves
Yeah,
that.
very astute from Rob actually.
Yeah, you roll
Um,
with the punches, you take it as it comes. I
yeah,
thought he handled that like a pro.
yeah,
That's what you have to do. You have to react and adapt to that situation, and he did it, I'm going to
yeah,
say, pretty seamlessly. Yeah.
yeah.
So well done,
Yeah,
Rob.
but yeah, very nicely done. I know it's like I mean, he get that guy gets so much stick for his sort of his style in sort of those post tournament sort of interviews, especially. But yeah, he was bang on with sort of how we reacted and moved on from that. So yeah, kudos to Mr. Walker there. Because I mean, I suppose obviously on that front, it's usually Ronnie, isn't it? Or like he keeps pushing like in interviews to try and get something out of him sometimes, but that's obviously a very different situation to actually someone being genuinely sort of crestfallen to the point that they're really kind of almost sort of unable to speak in a sort of coherent proper manner just because of the wave of emotions that are flowing through them. um and that's a tough job actually. It's harder to do the runner up than to the winner really, because obviously it's easy for the winner to say all the right things because because or any negativity that was sort of, in their brain during the match will be sort of washed away the instant they put that match winning ball, basically. But I do find it because some people are like, oh, if you can say like Sean, says all the right things quite like most of the time. He's very very articulate and speaks well and all the rest of it. And people say, oh, he's fake. He doesn't mean all of this sort of thing. But then if he says the wrong thing, he'll get sort of jumped on for that as well. So you can't really win. Essentially, you can be if you're brutally honest and in terms of how you feel in your performance. You can get criticized for sort of not saying the right things basically, but then on the flip side of that, when if you do sort of suck it all up and just give a sort of more by the numbers response, you can sort of be accused for not meaning any of that. So it's if you can't win either way, you might as well just say how you feel, I guess.
Well, the football interview, the traditional football interview after the match, where I was just happy I got my head on it and it thankfully hit the back of the net. We take the 3 points and we move on to next week. That is the cookie cutter football interview. Yeah. And in hockey, I used to, still try hockey, NHL. Every NHL interview during the game, during one of the intermissions or after the match is, we just skated hard, tried to fight hard for our teammates, try and get pucks on net. And hopefully the game plan will pay off and we'll take home the win or take home the W. It's just, oh my gosh, so it's what you said. You know what's going to be said before it's said. Mm. And when we get these cookie cutter, bland, boring, generic responses, we're not happy. But then when someone actually says how they feel or shows real emotion, like Anthony did, and I'll give him credit, he didn't try and put a brave face on. Everyone in that arena and watching at home knew how he felt. And sometimes... was it Ronan Keating said, you say it best when you say nothing at all. And I can't really criticise Anthony for not being too verbose in that situation. We know how he felt. He was honest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So as much as I'm not a fan...
Less is sometimes more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can't put it better. Yeah.
As much as I'm not a fan, I can't knock him for that at all. Yeah. So the British Open in the books. Have you got any more tournaments in your calendar this season?
I think Dan. Like there's always a tournament in the pipeline. So Northern Ireland for me next in a few weeks' time. Yeah, for the first time at the Waterfront Arena in Belfast. I'm very much looking forward to that.
That might be good, actually. I was hoping to go myself, but I. Ooh. Wait, which day is that?
It's mid-October, the third week of October, maybe. Might be wrong, but it's around there.
We're going to do
maybe end of it. Might be the last week of October. Might be the last week of October. I can't remember now exactly.
Here we go. Yeah, we're going to do some mid-pod Wikipediaing now from the 19th to the 26th of October.
Yeah,
according to Wikipedia, anyway. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to go.
I don't think anyone's gonna edit Wikipedia to give the wrong dates of the. I mean, that's quite a very specific niche prank if someone's...
There are some malicious people out there, Rob, and they will do this just to screw with snooker podcasts.
Yeah.
What have I got? Yeah, next one I've got confirmed is Berlin. I might try and get over it again. I want to do the UK Championship. I've never been to York for the snooker, so I want to do that if I can get a resale ticket or if someone has any tickets they have.
York is lovely at that time of year for the snooker with the sort of Christmas atmosphere in this city. It's a marvellous time of year to have that tournament. I think, as despite how expensive it makes everything around there, it is a very nice atmosphere.
Yeah, you get a few Christmas pancakes and it would be about 12 quid or something. It's
You say Christmas pancakes?
Those little Dutch pancakes that you get, the little... I don't know the Dutch word for them, but they're the smaller pancakes.
I'm not familiar. I clearly haven't lived.
Okay. They're quite good, but you need powdered sugar on them. I don't really like chocolate. I don't like Nutella at all. So it's but sometimes they'll put Nutella on them. I was like, no, just powdered sugar's fine, thanks. But yeah, that's a bit of a tangent.
Very much so. I'm not much of a pancake guy, and I didn't expect to be discussing them today, but there we are.
Tangents?
Tangents, perfect. Okay, that's
Tangents?
wrapped that up
Yeah,
nicely.
okay, that's good.
That,
Yeah.
there's the payoff or the pan off, I suppose.
Anyway, we've had 5 ranking events so far this snooker season, and this snooker season is going quickly. And one of the emails we're going to answer in a bit mentions that. But out of the 5 ranking events and the 1 non-ranking event, the Shanghai Masters, we have had nobody who has appeared in more than 1 final. So 12 final spots, 12
I
different
saw
players.
Phil Haig flagging this up last night, actually, and there was still some sort of prolific winners or sort of high-profile players that are yet to appear in the final. So that sort of run of tournaments may well continue. You wouldn't expect it to last sort of, because after every tournament, the odds of it continuing grow slimmer. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to keep an eye on for sure.
Because up next we've got the Xi'an Grand Prix.
Yes. Following there's a few qualifiers this week, but that's the next.
Yes,
international qualifiers this week, isn't it? And then Xi'an proper next week.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of who hasn't appeared in a final. The names that spring to mind straight away are Zhao Zhintong, Mark Selby, Mark Williams,
Hawkins, Ding,
and Judd Trump himself.
The main
world
man,
number 1, which is a surprise. 6 tournaments in, Judd Trump hasn't been in a final, and we're actually going to come to an email about that in a moment. But I thought there are a few names who do deserve a little bit of praise this season so far, and I wanted to know, 1, if you agree, and 2, any other names that you wanted to throw out there for those who've had a decent start to the season. I think Elliot Slessor.
I knew he was. I knew you were going to say that. I couldn't agree. I was thinking about. I saw him beat Judd in Brentwood, and I think that sort of cemented, the start he's having. I know you tipped him for. I think it was you that tipped him for ranking success this season at some point, and I have to agree. I don't think it's too far away, because he is. It sort of began, but it feels like with that. The very strong showing with the world qualifiers back in April. He put challenging Xing Tong sort of really like more than any other opponent he had in the tournament. So it was a shame. Like, I don't think he didn't qualify for the British, did he? I don't think. Was it Jackson?
No.
I think it was Jackson Page that maybe beat him in the qualifiers back in June. And obviously, Jackson is having a very very strong start to the season himself. So there's definitely no shame in losing there. But yeah, couldn't agree more with Elliot being one to watch.
Yeah. The other one, Neil Robertson, of course, won the biggest event of the year. Zhao Gudong and Mark Allen. But I think someone who's kind of flown under the radar a little bit is Mark Selby. I think he's looked quite good for the most part.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Okay.
It's hard to say. I mean, to me, maybe I'm stuck in the old days, but just to hear the words "under the radar" and Mark Selby, it feels like such a contradiction, because you're so used to him always sort of challenging at the business end for titles very consistently, and it still feels that way. I mean, I know people say he's dropped off a bit and he's coming back into form sort of now, but it doesn't really feel like he's been away, because I mean he was the defending champion, obviously, and so it was only a year ago he won the British, and I've never really felt that his form dipped massively, but I suppose that perhaps it's a testament to. I think perhaps his ranking is the lowest it's been for some time. He's 9th, maybe, something like that. But he's been such a consistent force on the circuit for such a long time. I think it's because obviously Shaun Murphy dropped out of the 16 briefly and ended his. I think it was he had been the longest running player in the top 16 year after year without dropping out. I think Mark Selby holds that mantle now, which just shows how consistent he was, and how even I suppose just very minor dips in form are sort of perceived.
Well, I've just done a little bit of mid-podcast checking. Mark Selby on the WST website, he is ranked number 10.
10. Oh, right, okay. Maybe it was
10.
9.
And on the,
close enough.
On the 1 year list, let's have a look where he is on the 1 year list. He's number 10 on the 1 year list as well, actually. So
right.
he's not a million miles away, but given the weighting of the Saudi Arabia snooker masters,
it feels like it doesn't fit. 10 doesn't feel like a Selby ranking. But when he won the Worlds 1 year, I think it was his second one. 2 years after his first, I think he was on the verge of falling out. I think he needed to win that world title, or he was out of the 16. He'd had quite a relatively barren stretch, but by his standards. So it just goes so you can have these sort of periods of wastelands in terms of trophies, but it doesn't necessarily mean a big one isn't right around the corner.
No, well, he won 2 ranking events last season. He won the non-ranking championship league as well, which I would say is not an easy tournament to win. Okay, it doesn't hold ranking points, but you need to work hard to do it.
Yeah, I suppose the argument there is that there's not a huge amount of pressure. That's something I wouldn't say, unless you're quite. I mean, for a player like Mark Selby, I wouldn't say there would be a lot of pressure on winning the non-ranking championship league, which I would regard as like the lesser championship league. I do quite enjoy the ranking one to kick off the season, and I actually think that's a perfect tournament to have over the summer, actually. But the non-ranking one, I feel is very. I could very much take or leave that. Just because of the format and its position in the calendar, it's all a little bit awkward, and it's marvelous to rack up those centuries, but it's not one that I delve into particularly heavily in terms of my watching.
No, I agree. I think I once called it, or I heard it called, competitive practice. But you're playing against good players, so it's good to get the arm loose. And all.
Yeah, that term has been banned direct. Paid practice.
Paid practice, maybe that was it.
Paid practice, yeah. Which I suppose it's a bit I do apologise to the Championship League for being disparaging towards it, but I love the ranking version, so there's that. But I know who's it? I think Nick Metcalf gets bored of this phrase, but it is what it is, and it's there. So yeah. It's the second time I've name dropped Metcalf in this podcast. I feel like I've overdone that twice.
No problem. No, Metcalf.
And Phil Haig. I name dropped Phil as well. So that's I hope you allow mentions of rival snooker pods.
There is a podcast I listen to, and it's a comedy podcast really, but they heard a third podcast, and the host was like, "Hey, don't be plugging other podcasts," because a guest mentioned another podcast. Hey, don't be plugging other podcasts. Whoa, okay, it's just like, chill out. No,
in a serious
Haig and Metcalf are cool. So. Sorry.
That podcast, they generally got angry about the plug-in of another.
The third podcast, but the podcast I listened to,
they just
were mocking that he was getting so angry. It's like, dude, chill out. But no, it's no problem mentioning Haig and Metcalf talking snooker. They're good lads, so they know what they're talking about, I think. So
yes,
I listen.
Yes, same here. So, yes,
yeah.
Listen to Talking Snooker, folks. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
And actually, when I was just collating the correspondence, which we'll come to now, where is it? I've copied the questions here, but I can't find. There we go. I found it. Another podcast comes up, and we will be plugging that one as well. I don't know if you've listened, but we'll come to this in a moment. First question from Brian. No, that's not true. I've gone down too far. First question is from Tom. Hi Dan, I hope you're well. I discovered the Snooker Hall podcast a few months ago after the episode with Neil Folds, and I spent the summer checking out a few older episodes. We're a few tournaments into the new season already, and time is flying. But am I right to be concerned about Judd Trump this season? He's just been knocked out of the English Open, so this came in last week. He's just been knocked out of the English Open in the last 16, and he went out earlier than expected in the other events too. What are your thoughts on why Judd's results have been suffering? If you look at his socials, you will mostly see him and his brother partying in East Asia or chilling by a pool in Dubai. Could it be the start of a decline, or at least the early signs of one? Maybe not as dramatic as the change we saw in Luca Broussel, but having achieved so much in snooker, could Judd be looking at easing his workload? I'd be keen to hear the thoughts from other listeners too. Anyway, I'm enjoying the podcast. Keep it going. Tom.
Well, firstly on that, I will say that Neil Folds episode you did was fantastic. It might be a bit of recency bias, but that would be my personal favourite from your catalogue so far. I think.
And for such a rookie in broadcasting as well as Neil is, he's got no experience at all. I had to kind of walk him through it, of course. But I think he held up quite well.
Yeah, you're taking all the credit for that.
I'll
Neil,
take all the credit for that. He does the work. I'll take the credit. Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah,
with that.
on the Judd front, I mean, I've never been a fan of sort of picking out social media moments from players and sort of thinking, well, they're doing this, they're out there, they're drinking this, they're wearing that, they're having a good time here, etc. And then sort of using it as to potentially explain sort of a lack of form or such, because I think it's sort of picking and choosing, and in a sense you don't really know the whole picture, so it's a very sort of narrow view in my opinion. People did it with sort of Luca Broussel quite a bit recently. Obviously he hasn't been playing that much, but it's it's one of those things people kind of sometimes pick out from one social media post, for example, and then extrapolate a whole sort of scenario or conspiracy theory, if you like, sort of based on that, about why they're not playing or why they're not playing too well. So I don't think there's enough information to really work with to really make that. I mean, obviously everyone can have their opinions and thoughts and views and all of that, but I personally I can't sort of stretch that far in terms of explaining form that way. I think it's too early to say really. I mean, obviously the field is very competitive and all of that, and it's still relatively early in this season. And I mean, last season Judd nearly got knocked out of Saudi. Pretty early on, he had the comeback against which Chinese player was it?
It was Wu Yize.
Wu Yize, yeah. So it's the margins are so small, and like. I've no doubt Judd will bounce back at some point. Maybe he won't be as prolific as he has been, but I think it's pretty ludicrous to start talking about mentioning the word decline. I think that word is overused in snooker generally. It feels like sometimes a player goes out early, a couple of tournaments in a row, and it's like decline in capital letters. And we see time and time again players bouncing back after sort of very lengthy droughts. So I don't think you can write anyone off. Like even I suppose after if it's years, then maybe you have there's a case to be made. But within when it's been a handful of months, I just think things can change very quickly, and I would like maybe I will this will come back to bite me, but I'd bank on Judd winning a tournament before Christmas. I think he's that sort of player that I don't think it will be very far away at all.
Well, a couple of things. So speaking of droughts, the aforementioned Neil Robertson, he went over a year without winning a tournament, but then he won 3 big ones in a year, in a space of 12 months. So it shows that it can happen. Maybe something's going on off the table. Maybe he's trying out new techniques. Maybe whatever it may be. But speaking of other podcasts, Michael Day, a friend of the Snooker Hall podcast, he's just started the Totally Snookered podcast. So I'm going to plug another podcast. I think it's a good podcast. There's only been 2 episodes so far, but so far it's been 2 good episodes. So check out Totally Snookered podcast.
I haven't listened to it, but I'm very familiar with Michael's work, and so it's definitely one that's on my radar to catch up with at some point.
One of the questions that he received in correspondence was very similar to this, actually. And Michael brought up that Judd is working with a new cue now. And for players of our standard, not quite world class, shall we say, a cue is a cue. But for players who have been playing,
I'm just on that. I'm happy to be that you've lumped a player as bad as me in with yourself. I'll take that any day. I'm very happy with that. Players of our standard. I feel that's a boost, isn't it? That's well.
Well, I'm just trying to be kind. I'm not that great myself, but for someone of Judd's standard who's been playing with that cue, it would appear since he won the World Championship, so it's at least 6 years. He's been practicing with it. We assume day in, day out.
Michael Day in, day out. Sorry.
Michael Day in, Michael Day out. Yeah, it's good. It's good. You can assume that there's got to be some sort of adjustment, and there has to be you have to give him a bit of leeway for that. And Michael brought that up, and I thought it was a good point, actually. For us, as mere mortals on the snooker table, a cue is a cue. But for those guys, it ain't. It's like the instrument with which they perform their craft. So I think that was a good point. Did a little bit of checking on this just before and I have some stats about Judd Trump this season. He is, where is he? I copied the stats here, but now I can't actually find them. Let's have a look. He is on the 1-year ranking list, number 37. But of course, on the official ranking list, he's number 1 by a fair distance.
Yeah,
but
that's mainly due to Saudi, isn't it? That's
mainly, yes. Yeah, and in UK, UK and Saudi mainly.
Well, the 1 year. I mean, the 1 year list being that low down was getting knocked out early in Saudi, wasn't it?
Yes, probably. Yeah. And I would say, okay, losing to Ollie Lyons 5-3, a slight surprise. I think Judd would have gone in as a comfortable favourite there, but Ollie's a good player. In Shanghai, he lost to Mark Selby, 6-4, one of the all-time greats. No disgrace there, I would say. In Wuhan, he lost to Gary Wilson in a decider. English Open, lost to Elliot Slesser, number 6 on the 1 year list, I might say, in a decider. And the British Open, he lost to Shaun Murphy, one of the all-time greats, in a decider.
So he ain't mode Shaun as well. Yeah, there's no shame in that.
Like, he ain't a million miles away from making a lot more progress in those tournaments. So it's just a couple of frames here and there, and he could easily be number 8.
The margins are so small, and it's easy to look back on time and think, they were clearly the best player, or this and that, or just look at results at a face value and think, he's been going out early, he's not in good form. But it's there's more nuance to it than that. It's just such narrow margins a lot of the time, and I suppose it does feel like sometimes, I guess, you can just get a run of, it's not so much bad luck, but results just not going your way. So I'd say that looking at those, you'd have to think he's one sort of one decent result, and it could be a conveyor belt of Judd trophies again once it sort of turns the other direction.
I think there's an interesting point to be made with this as well. Judd, in the past, I think it was when Mark Selby was world champion. Anyway, Judd Trump won like 5 tournaments in a season. But I think Mark Selby won the world championship the same season. But Judd said that his achievement deserves more respect than winning the world championship. I would say given how Judd's career has unfolded over the last 6 years, we'll say, where he's just been a winning machine, I would say that context has changed. Judd
Interesting.
is on 30 ranking titles now, if I'm not mistaken. He doesn't need to win the Scottish Open anymore. He doesn't need to win the Grand Prix, the Champions League tournaments like this. He just doesn't need to. He's proven that part of his game. The only weapon his detractors have is that he has only won a single World Championship. Now, if he wins a second, it will silence a lot of those detractors. That's the focus for him now. He wants more Crucible crowns. Now, if in the past, so for example, it was a few years ago, he won like 3 or 4 tournaments again. Even last year, he won 2 big ones, went out at the semis of the World Championship. He didn't get over the line against Mark Williams. The end will justify the means for Judd Trump. If he does a Mark Selby, wins nothing throughout the season, and wins the World Championship, he will consider that season a success, as he well should. If you become world champion, your season has been successful.
Yeah,
no
I don't
what.
think any player would ever consider that not
There's
a
no
success.
way it can't be.
That would have to be some quite extraordinary circumstances for that to have to be the case, I think.
And
I think that's an
if he
interesting
does
point.
that,
Yeah, I've not heard that raised. It's interesting because it's you're talking about achievement being like the value of an achievement is all about the sort of the context and the place, the position in the player's career at the time of making that achievement, which is actually which isn't really spoken about that much. It's, I mean, a lot of it. I mean, at its core, it comes down to how much you value ranking titles comparatively to world titles, and I do like the way you're sort of saying, well, they shouldn't necessarily mean as much to Judd now that he's sort of encumbered by them. So he's drowning in them. So it takes the edge off their value to a certain extent comparatively to world titles. I think that's fair. At the same time, obviously, winning what he has, like 5 titles in a season is incredible. Like you can't get away from that. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier, actually, in terms of the third world title isn't quite as high up the ladder as the second. If you're winning a plethora of ranking titles season after season, it's winning ranking title 25, 26 and 27 isn't as good as winning ranking title 1, 2 and 3 comparatively, in terms of sort of making waves in your career. I don't think many people would argue with that. So I suppose it's and this goes back to what I was just saying about it being very early in Judd's season. I think it is foolish to sort of write him off, and I think it's hard to judge anyone's sort of form really, because it's looking back, it stuff changes over the course of a season, and like you say, if Judd wins the world title at the end of the season, that completely changes everything. Anything that happened before that is going to be,
yep.
who cares? What doesn't matter? Like, and some people say, oh, if Judd were winning titles now, some people would, probably detractors would say, oh, peaking too early, he's not going to win that world title.
Exactly. Yes.
So there's a lot to be said for having quieter patches, and we see purple patches all the time. So it's you still wouldn't bet against him. Even if he didn't win anything between now and April, you still wouldn't bet against him. Rocking up and winning the worlds, because we all know what a quality player he is. So it's snooker is unpredictable. You can't. None of us knows what's going to happen, I suppose. As much as we try and read all the stats and read all the patterns and work it all out. More often than not, most of us end up surprised one way or another. So it's not the 90s anymore, where you could bank on a Hendry victory year after year. I don't know. I'm waffling on again. Next question.
Let's just see. Let's have a look. Brian McGovern.
I
Brian
knew it
McGovern.
would be. I was going to say there's a few Brians in the snooker scene, but I was like, that's got to be Brian McGovern. He loves his podcast.
Hope you enjoyed the English Open final. I certainly did, and overall, it was an enjoyable week. If Mark Allen keeps doing what he's doing, he will be a formidable opponent for anyone. I will be heading to Belfast again, and I'm going to the semi-finals. Not sure if that's on your radar. Is that on your radar, just out of interest?
It's not. No, I've spoken to Brian about this. Our paths are not going to cross. I'll be there a bit earlier than that,
Okay.
so unfortunately. But I will keep a seat warm for him. Maybe it's reserved seating, but you get my meaning.
Tell him which seat you're in. Yeah. If the English Open is anything to go by, we should be in for some thrilling action. Glad to see some improvement on the TV score graphics, and they got rid of the all-red graphics from previous years. Myself and some of my visually impaired friends found it difficult to see the previous graphics. It leads me to a question. Does WST work with disability groups and people who are visually impaired to help enhance enjoyment of the sport? Sorry about the long-winded email. Keep up the good work. Kind regards, Brian McGovern. I did try and do a little bit of digging, and I kind of hit a brick wall, so I don't really have a good answer for you from what I found out. However, I have maybe slightly next to an answer. Colin Matty, qualified coach and friend of the Snooker podcast, top bloke. He has worked as a coach with players who with visual impairment, living with blindness, physical disabilities, and maybe some parts of the sport might not be so easy, but it's not inaccessible. And with people like Colin helping out, then it might be slightly easier. I don't really have a better answer than that. But his point on Mark Allen, Rob, I think it's hard to disagree with. If Mark Allen's in the zone, like he was at some points during that final against Zhou Yulong, he's hard to beat. He is hard to beat.
I think he's like Allen is a Selby-esque player these days, obviously. So it's and I think you can never write those types of players off because they're so hard to sort of shake off the table, if you like. And it again, Mark Allen's one of those that hasn't really, and by his own admission, he would say he wasn't really sort of living up to his own sort of skill set, if you like. But again, like he's done enough in the sport over the years to always be considered up there as one of one of the elite players. I think just about. Like I say, what is it? 12 ranking titles. Was that his 12th? In the English.
That was number 12. He drew level with Shaun, who's now pulled ahead again.
That's not a stat. Is by no means that's more than sort of say Kyron, isn't it?
That's more than Kyron, yeah.
Yeah,
and like Kyron is one of the best players of the generation.
Exactly. So it's possibly a bit underrated in terms of what Mark has actually achieved. I suppose like not winning the world title is probably, I suppose, the obviously the biggest thing missing on his CV. But he's been around for sort of quite some time now, really, and really sort of racked up those titles. And his record in finals is it 8 or 9? Like the last finals he's been in, he's won, I think, which is an incredible stat, really. So it kind of makes you think maybe he's one of those players that kind of gets better, the deeper he goes in a tournament. Perhaps I'll have to look at his semi record to kind of delve into that more fully, I think. But he's always Mark's always a player I love to see doing well. And I'm hoping I get a chance to watch him on his home turf in Belfast as well. Yeah.
Well, I think Mark's got a few really good achievements under his belt. He's the only player ever to have knocked in a maximum at the UK, the Masters, and the World Championship. No one else has done that. He's only one away. He's only a Welsh Open away from completing the Home Nation Series Grand Slam. I think he's the only player even on 3, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Neil's only one away as well, I believe.
Is he? What does Neil need?
I'm not sure which one. I can't remember offhand which one it is he's missing.
I think he needs
maybe
Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland, yeah. So that's.
But Mark has won the Masters as well.
Yeah,
that's no mean feat. That's one of the elite tournaments. I think Mark Allen's had a fantastic career.
Mm.
He's honest. He
Yeah,
doesn't he doesn't sugarcoat what he
yeah.
feels. He doesn't give
I
those
think yeah.
cookie
No one
cutter
could. Yeah,
answers.
yeah. I think he's always. It's just a sort of matter of fact. Wears his heart on his sleeve, and I think he's a very popular player on the whole because of that. Um, and I think so, sometimes he's probably felt a bit alone. I know he was very pleased when Selby brought up the table conditions in Brentwood, or the conditions of the venue in general, because I think he has felt a bit alone out there in terms of sort of not being afraid to stick his head above the parapet, if you like. And he's paid paid a hefty sum in fines over the years, but I don't think it's any of that has dented his popularity at all.
No, if anything, it probably enhances it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he's a great character to have in snooker.
Yeah.
Okay, sometimes he said he gave value for money. He gave a little bit too much value for money. I said, God, it was like that was a tough final session to sit through. If it weren't so exciting and so gripping, it would have been physically tough to get through 5 hours of sitting at those Brentwood seats. Oh, but I don't know. I think having Mark Allen in snooker, the sport is a lot better for it, and people like him.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
completely agree.
yeah,
Can't argue with that.
yeah.
I think the seats in Cheltenham were worse than Brentwood, in my opinion. But
Yes, so you said, yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
not much that we can do about that. That is what it is.
No, fair enough. Yeah. And final email we'll go to is Scott Reed. Hello, Dan. The snoot.
Was
The
that a
new.
command? He's saying read like
Spelled differently, actually.
I didn't realise you wrote down stage directions there.
Reed. Hello, Dan. The new snooker season has started with a bang. The only negative so far for me is that I really wanted Joe Yulong to complete that comeback in Brentwood, actually speaking of Mark Allen, but I think the damage was done in the first session. Can you see him getting another chance like that to win a ranking tournament? I have to say that I am not optimistic. Second question, Joe Yulong has won a big title this season. I'll get it out. Do you think any of the other Chinese players will seriously challenge for honours? Well, I think.
Well, yes, sir. It's surely got to be not too far away. I think he's looking the part more and more every time I see him personally.
He's someone I've made a little note here about him actually. Joe Yulong, he says the damage was done in the first session. I think maybe it was. Mark Allen won the first session 6-2, but the next 7 frames was 6-1 to Joe Yulong. So he was 8-7 up, and maybe he just ran out of steam. I don't know. But in terms of, do I see him making another ranking event final soon and having another chance to break that duck? Maybe. I don't really want to commit to it and say yes.
How he reacts to the English Open and sort of how he takes that sort of moving forward in terms of his preparation, I suppose. He's always been touted as one for sort of big titles. It was one of the big 3 along with Yan Bingtao and Zhao Xingtong a few years ago, wasn't it? There was always those 3 that were sort of under the spotlight. So I mean, I don't know if it will come this season, but I don't think it would be a huge shock. Now he's reached a final. It wasn't completely out of the blue, I don't think. So it's sort of one of those. He's one of those players that's sort of been sort of rumbling in that direction, and obviously sort of tipped for sort of greatness in a lot of ways. Maybe hasn't quite got there. So I think it would be something of a. Something of a surprise. I suppose all first-time winners are kind of surprising in some sense, but I don't think it would. It's not setting the shock waves alight in terms of magnitude of shock.
I think, well, if you consider those 2 that he was compared with, Zhao Xintong, UK champion and world champion, Yang Bingtao, Masters champion, they've won the Triple Crown between them. And Zhou Yulong is still scrapping for his first. I made a prediction at the first round of the Crucible. He was drawn against Judd Trump. I tipped an exit for Judd Trump. I thought Zhou Yulong would beat him, actually. I was wrong. 10-4 to Judd Trump. But, sorry, shows what I know. But the fact that I was willing to say that in public, in front of the snooker hall community, shows that I clearly have a little bit of faith in him. Would I bet on him to win? I'd rather bet on other players, of course, especially if we just include the Chinese players.
Yeah.
You mentioned Wu Yize. At the start of last season, the two Chinese players that were most talked about were Su Xiaowei and Wu Yize. Wu Yize made 2 finals. Su Xiaowei made 1, if I'm not mistaken. They lost all 3 of them. I don't think they will win a tournament this season between them. And I think Su Xiaowei, over the last 12 months, his results have fallen off a cliff. I don't know if it's these rumours about issues off the table, whatever it may be, but he's not the same player he was 18 months ago. I don't think he has that fear factor anymore as the young, up-and-coming guy who's going to blow you off the table, attacking fresh snooker.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about the potential off-the-table rumours. If I'm thinking about the same thing, that was quite a while ago now. I never thought that anything related to that would have gained, and it didn't feel like there was enough there that would actually have affected his form in terms of it being a huge thing for him. Maybe I'm completely wrong there, and obviously we don't know the whole picture. But so I suppose it is a possibility. That is something I hadn't considered at all there. Yeah.
Of the Chinese players, I mean, I would say Zhao Zhintong obviously is going to be the most likely to win a tournament. Zhao Gudong win another one.
Yeah. I think it is.
Ding Junhui.
Zhao Gudong is very impressive, because he obviously won, successfully defended his title, which is impressive in and of itself. But to not play in Saudi, to have the great honor of playing in the World Games and then winning that, I think that is incredibly impressive and incredibly a respectable move for him. It really makes me sort of admire him as both a player and a person, because it's a lot of money to essentially sort of say no thank you to. But he really did. Sort of his decision, it couldn't have worked out any better for him ultimately, really. So hats off. And I think he did, because he's a player. Zhao's a player that has been, it feels like he's been around for as long as I've followed the sport. In a close fashion, he's always been sort of knocking around the sort of between the 32 and the 16, and so it's very, very satisfying. And he was always a bit sort of under the radar, in my opinion, underrated. Despite sort of getting some great results sort of here and there, and being quite consistent with that ranking position. So yeah, very satisfying to see it all sort of come to fruition in the last couple of seasons.
The other players I did think about when I received this email were Pang Junzhu, who if I had to bet, I remember I said this to Michael Day actually, if I had to put a bet on Pang Junzhu, Su Xiaowei or Wu Yize to win a tournament, I'd actually put a bet on Pang Junzhu. I think he's a really solid player.
Final against Mark Selby, wasn't it? A couple of seasons ago.
He made the WST Classic,
yeah.
But it wouldn't be a massive surprise to see him turn up in Edinburgh or in Wales and win it. It really would.
Yeah, he feels like he blows a bit hot and cold though, disappears for stretches of a season. But definitely, he definitely flies under the radar, despite that. Because I feel like even at the time, I suppose that tournament was kind of low key, just before the Worlds as well. I do feel he flies under the radar, sort of compared to a few of the other sort of Chinese players of a similar ilk. But definitely one that's worth keep. Did he reach another final? Did he reach a final last season, or came? I can't remember what his last sort of strong result was. I know he has good shows good performances here and there, but I can't remember if he's the last time he sort of reached the business end of an event.
Let's have a look. I'm going to open up his Wikipedia page right here. He made the semi-finals in Northern Ireland last
That
season,
might be the
and he
one
made
I'm
the
thinking of. Yeah.
quarterfinals in Shanghai and at the World Open actually. But he's not had a great start to this season. He didn't qualify for, well, apparently he hasn't qualified for Jean Grand Prix. So and he didn't qualify for the British Open. He lost that qualifier quite heavily, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does have a strong showing here and there. The one player who I think will become more forgotten about, we've forgotten about him so far during this conversation, is Zhang Anda. I can't see him challenging. I think he's going to continue going downhill. I don't think he'll be challenging for honours anytime.
I saw him play in Cheltenham. He played Rhian Evans. Rhian wasn't on it that day, so perhaps sort of the pressure was off him a bit. But he knocked in but it's 3 centuries. I can't remember how many total clearances it was among them, but it was, he was a scoring beast, and he's still got. I mean, was it the UK last season? I was there when he knocked in the maximum at in that one.
Yeah.
It's like he's. I think he has still got it. I feel like people often kind of think, I've got to pick someone in the 16 that I think is going to sort of slide off. And I think Zhang's a bit of an easy target there, because of the manner in which he kind of he'd been around as a bit of a sort of journeyman, if you like, for sort of many years. I don't really like using the term journeyman, as I know some people think it's a bit disrespectful, but he kind of the way in which he sort of burst out from that in the manner he did with and hurled himself into the upper echelons of the rankings. I feel people sort of expected a sort of similar sort of downturn. Obviously his results haven't been sort of as strong, nowhere near really. I don't think they've been terrible. He's still showing very, very sort of strong performances here and there, and I don't think we've seen the last of Zhang Anda in big finals at least. I reckon there's more to come from him.
So we disagree on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Time will tell. We've got a bit of spice going. Come on.
So maybe I'll be your new arch nemesis. Neil Robertson is out the window. I'm the new arch nemesis.
I didn't expect Zhang Anda of all people to be such a point of contention. Like on Zhang, I like calling him Mighty Mouse. Like I thought I liked that nickname, but apparently I have heard he's not a fan of it, so I'm kind of a bit wary of using it too much. I'm not a fan of him being was it the Panda, because that's Sanderson Lamb.
That should be Sanderson Lamb, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it's like everything's a bit betwixt and between. So I want everything there to be clarified, and it's one of those things that's festering in my mind as just unresolved annoyances. So maybe someone can email in and just completely set the record straight on everything on how. Yeah, I don't know.
Who thought of it first?
Get Zhang, if you're listening, email in and tell us what you want.
So we've tackled some correspondence. We have looked back at the early parts of the season, and of course we talked about the British Open. We talked about your public blood feud with Neil Robertson. I'm going to I'll drop that narrative now. It was funny for a few minutes, but I think if I keep going on with that, it just won't be funny anymore. So I'm going to drop that now.
I'm going to try and use the term blood feud in more conversations. I think that's the most mundane things I can think of.
But I think we've done well today. I think we've got through a lot of content. I think we've got a lot of ideas out there, and that's the point of the podcast. Just share some ideas. You've brought some ideas to the table that I hadn't thought of, and that's the idea. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, great stuff, Dan. Yeah, I really appreciate sort of you inviting me back on. I'm really happy to see your podcast going from strength to strength. You've done sort of a tremendous run of episodes last season. I hope you keep it going for a very long time.
So do I. I enjoy doing it, and it's good fun. It's chatting with people from all corners of the snooker world. So keep an eye on your podcast feeds, and I know we've got some qualifiers this week, but when the tournament proper begins again in Jan, I hope everybody enjoys it, and take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers, Rob.